A new year and new scams. With banking scams now on the rise and new laws threatening $50 million fines for non-compliance, why are 2/3 of Australians' top banks failing to adequately protect against email fraud? Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Steve Moros, the Senior Director, Advanced Technologies Group, APJ, from Proofpoint. Good to see you. Let's discuss Proofpoint's latest research. Take us through a little bit about this story.
So Mike, great to see you. Happy New Year to you and all the viewers. So firstly, let me explain DMARC very quickly. DMARC, it's a technical standard that helps protect email senders from unauthorized use of their domain. So very quickly, it's like a security guard protecting your email domain, checking every email and ensuring they make a decision on where it gets through. Now, what we found with our analysis is, as you said, 2/3 of the banks are subjecting customers, partners and their employees to higher risks of email fraud. So we found that 66% of the banks, they do not enforce the recommended strictest reject level of DMARC implementation. And 25% of the banks do not have any DMARC record at all. So they are wide open to email fraud and domain spoofing attacks.
Absolutely.
Now, on a positive note, there's got to be a positive. So 75% of the banks implement some form of DMARC, but at varying levels. So only 34% are at reject, the highest level. 14% at quarantine, and 27% are at monitor, so just reviewing what they do. And we analysed this in November, and it's based upon APRA's register of authorised deposit-taking institutions. So about 85 institutions that we reviewed.
Okay, so it sounds like they sort of have a responsibility to enact this stuff, but how does DMARC help prevent email fraud? And of course, those spoofing, we see, you might get an email from your bank and they've updated the graphics and they've made it look a little bit like the website from an official bank.
Correct. And look, AI is making these attacks much simpler for the bad guys, right? So they're using this to legitimize it and make it easier for them to trick users. But it's important that companies have DMARC in place, and I'll give you 3 key reasons. The first one is to prevent cyber criminals from spoofing the organization's domain and identities. So stopping them, use your brand to attack consumers. Number 2, it's to reduce the risk of email fraud and scams. And number 3, it's to prevent suspicious emails from ever reaching the consumer's inbox.
Okay, so what risks do consumers, customers I should say, and employees face due to these weak email authentication systems that have been put in place, or perhaps they haven't put them in place?
Well, look, the consequences are pretty vast, and I'll give you some stats here. In 2023, Australians reported losing $16.2 million to payment redirection scams. These are quite common. So this is basically money lost, and the scams are growing in terms of scale and also in how much money is lost. And one example recently is a couple lost $800,000 on their home deposit. So this is essentially what the consequence is, right? The organization that doesn't have DMARC in place, their brand is being used and hackers are intercepting this and they're taking money or information that they use to then get some financial gain.
Okay, well, let's touch on this $50 million fine that's being put in place when it comes into play. How is that going to impact banks' approach to scam prevention? I imagine there'll be a little more attention than usual.
Well, yes, and firstly, the ACCC Scam Watch stated that Australians reported 198,000 scams with a total loss of 208 million. That was in 2024 alone. That's what has been reported, so there's probably a lot more. Now, to date, organisations were required to report breaches, but they had no financial penalty. Well, the legislation, which was introduced by Parliament on the 7th of November, will give the government and the ACCC powers to force social media companies, the banks, the telcos, to better protect consumers. Now, with the ability to impose fines of up to $50 million, if they don't take reasonable steps to prevent, detect, disrupt and report scams, I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure this will happen, that we will see an increase in investments and board awareness and organisations taking the right steps to protect consumers.
Steve, what steps should banks prioritise to strengthen that email security and perhaps everything we've touched on today?
This is a tough one, right? Because all banks do spend lots of money in cybersecurity.
Yes, yeah.
There's lots of vendors out there, and sometimes they might make some regrettable decisions and they don't have the right platforms in place. But at the end of the day, this is a people problem. Cyber criminals are targeting organizations by humans and people and tricking them. Modern day cyber criminals, they don't actually hack in. So they don't go into the perimeter, they actually log in as us. And so therefore, we have to make sure that organizations implement, not just demark to reject, but they have to build a human-centric security capability and invest in platforms that are focused on protecting people and assets beyond the perimeter. We're in a cloud era.
Yeah.
So data is everywhere, right? So that's a key thing they need to do.
Yeah, AI, machine learning, and of course the cloud, as you said there, Steve, as well. If people want to find out more, perhaps learn a bit more about Proofpoint's research, where's the best avenue to get in touch?
Well, Proofpoint.com has a fair bit of the information on our research, so that's probably the best place to go. But they can always search on Proofpoint.com for blogs and specific posts that we have on recommendations that people could take.
Steve, as always, thank you for joining us on the program, and a timely reminder for the big banks to step up their game in the year ahead as the cyber criminals continue to step up theirs.
Thank you. Great to be with you.